I used to think that silence was safer than rejection. That if I stayed quiet long enough, maybe the people who claimed to love me would finally notice the absence I left in their noise. My parents were always loud about the things that made them proud. My brother's trophies, my cousin's degree, my mother's perfectly decorated dinner table. But when it came to me, the volume always went down. I was the static between their favorite stations. I was the almost, the could have been, the maybe, next time. When I told them I was getting married, I remember the look on my mother's face. It wasn't joy. It wasn't curiosity. It was calculation. Like she was adding up the cost of the dress, the food, the embarrassment of explaining me to people she barely liked. My father didn't even look up from his phone. Just muttered, "That's nice." Like I'd told him I bought a new pair of shoes, not that I was stepping into a new life. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that I was grown. That love would fill the spaces where family should have been. But the truth is, you never stop craving the applause of the people who raised you. Even when they've never clapped for you before. The weeks before my wedding were quiet. No calls, no texts. My mother didn't ask about the dress. My father didn't offer to walk me down the aisle. I kept checking my phone like maybe, just maybe, there'd be a missed call. Some part of me hoped they'd surprise me, show up, sit in the back row, maybe even pretend for a day that they cared. They didn't. The morning of my wedding, I stared at my reflection in the mirror and tried to convince myself that I wasn't waiting for them. That the ache in my chest wasn't their absence. That I didn't care if my father's side of the family whispered about how they couldn't even bother to come. But when the music started and I took that first step down the aisle, every face blurred, except the empty seats where they should have been. It's a special kind of heartbreak when the people who gave you life don't want to witness you living it. Afterward, I smiled for the photos. I danced, I laughed, I cut the cake. Everyone said it was beautiful, and it was, on the outside. But I went home that night and cried in a dress that smelled like roses and disappointment. I kept wondering what was wrong with me. What kind of daughter you had to be worth showing up for. The next few months, I didn't hear a word from them. Not even a congratulations. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. The silence became normal, like white noise in a house that never felt like home. I threw myself into work, into goals, into proving that I could be more than what they refused to see. It's funny, how rejection becomes fuel. How the sting of being forgotten can turn into a fire so hot it burns everything you once begged for. I worked late nights. Said yes to opportunities that scared me. Built something out of the fragments of my self-worth. People saw the version of me that my parents never did. The one that could handle herself, that could build her own name, her own empire. Success didn't come overnight, it came in pieces. In exhaustion, in tears on bathroom floors, in almost and not yets, but I didn't stop, I couldn't. Every time I wanted to give up, I'd hear my mother's voice in my head saying, "You always make things harder than they need to be." And she was right. Except this time, hard meant growth, hard meant breaking the curse of needing their approval. 3 years later, I stood in a luxury dealership staring at a silver Porsche 911, the kind of car you see in magazines and think, that's for someone else. But for once, it didn't feel out of reach, it felt earned. It felt like an apology the world never gave me. When the salesman handed me the keys, I felt this strange, quiet power, not arrogance but peace. I wasn't buying a car, I was buying back every moment I was told I'd never be enough. And then somehow they found out. It was my cousin, of course. She posted a photo, captioned it with "big wins for my girl," and tagged me. It didn't take long. My phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. Caroline. My mother's voice, suddenly warm, suddenly familiar. "We saw your car! Wow, a Porsche! That must have cost a fortune! You should come by. Your father would love to see it. Love to see it." Not me, it. I laughed quietly. Because that's when it hit me. They didn't ignore me because they couldn't see my worth. They ignored me because they only recognized worth when it wore a price tag. When I pulled up to their house that weekend, they were waiting outside. My father, who hadn't attended my wedding, was standing on the porch smiling like a man who just spotted an investment opportunity. My mother came running out with that same fox excitement she used when the neighbors were watching. "Oh, it's beautiful!" she gasped, circling the car. "You must be doing so well. What is it, 100,000, 120, 135? I said quietly. Her eyes widened and for a moment I swear I saw pride. Not in me, but in the car. She touched the door like it was a sacred object. My father finally came over, patted my shoulder like an old colleague, and said, "See, I always knew you'd do something big." And that line, it hit like a punch, because he didn't. He never did. He knew how to doubt me, how to remind me of my place, how to make me feel small, but belief. That was never in his vocabulary. They invited me inside, offered tea, talked about how they'd been meaning to call. My mother even mentioned, casually, that her friends were asking about me. You should bring the car to the next family dinner, she said. Everyone would love to see it. I smiled politely, but inside, I felt hollow. Because I realized, they weren't proud of me. They were proud of the reflection I gave them, the illusion that they'd raised a daughter worth envying. I sipped my tea and looked around the house that used to feel like mine. The framed photos, none of me. The same old curtains. The same old silence, now dressed up as small talk. I wanted to scream, to shake them, to ask, where were you when I was begging for you to show up? But I didn't, because I finally understood. You can't demand love from people who only understand status. So I stayed a while, let them talk, let them pretend. And when I stood up to leave, my mother followed me to the door. You should visit more often, she said sweetly. Your father and I, we miss you. I looked at her, really looked. The same woman who couldn't find the time to attend her only daughter's wedding. The same woman who taught me that silence was how you punish love. I wanted to say, you miss the version of me you can brag about. But I didn't. I just smiled. I'll think about it. I got into the car, started the engine, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I didn't need them to see me drive away. As the road stretched out ahead, I thought about how strange it is. That sometimes, the same people who made you feel invisible will only notice you when you start to shine. But that shine, it doesn't belong to them. It's yours. I thought about my wedding, the empty seats, the silence, and how maybe that silence wasn't punishment. Maybe it was protection. Because some absences are blessings in disguise. I used to think the worst pain was being ignored. But now I know it's being noticed for the wrong reasons. Success doesn't heal everything. It doesn't erase the hurt of realizing your parents will only clap when the world does first. But it teaches you something priceless: your worth isn't conditional. There's a part of me that still loves them. Of course there is. Love doesn't just vanish, it transforms. It becomes quieter, wiser. It stops begging to be chosen and starts choosing itself. I don't hate them for coming back. I just don't welcome them in the same way anymore. Because when you've had to build yourself from scratch, you learn to protect your peace like it's the last thing you own. That Porsche, it's just a car. But to me, it's a symbol. Not of wealth, but of the journey. Of every time I was told, no, and decided to answer with, watch me. Of every time I cried alone and then showed up the next morning anyway. Of every version of me that they refused to see. And every one that refused to die. I remember once when I was a teenager, my father said, you're too emotional. The world doesn't reward girls like that. Maybe he was right, the world didn't. But I did. I rewarded myself with persistence, with patience, with pride that doesn't come from a paycheck. Now, when people ask about my family, I just say, they taught me everything I needed to unlearn. And that's not bitterness, it's truth. Because some of us are born into families that don't know how to love out loud. They love through comparison, through control, through conditions. And we spend years trying to earn what should have been given freely. But here's the secret I've learned: the moment you stop auditioning for their love, you start living. I used to imagine what it would feel like to have my parents look at me and finally say, we're proud of you. Now, I don't need to hear it, because I've said it to myself 1,000 times in ways they never could. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by consistency, by who shows up, by who claps when there's no spotlight. My real family, it's the people who held me when I broke down, who didn't flinch when I failed, who saw the woman under the scars. I don't drive that car to impress anyone. I drive it as a reminder that once upon a time I was the girl nobody showed up for. And now I show up for myself every single day. And maybe, just maybe, that's what healing looks like. Not forgiveness, not revenge, just peace, quiet, undeniable peace. Because at the end of the day, the loudest "I made it" doesn't come from the engine of a Porsche. It comes from the soft voice inside that says you survived. And that voice, it's worth more than $135,000. It's worth everything. The truest luxury is peace. The kind that comes when you stop needing to be seen by those who never looked. I didn't understand that for most of my life. I thought luxury was something you could touch, something you could buy, something that gleamed under the sunlight and made other people turn their heads. I thought if I could just reach a certain point, earn a certain number, wear a certain smile, I'd finally feel that quiet inside me that I mistook for happiness. But I was wrong. Peace doesn't come from having more, it comes from needing less. It comes from no longer craving validation from the people who never offered it freely. I used to live for moments when someone would finally see me. When my parents would look at me with that glow of pride I watched them give to everyone else. I'd perform for it, shape shift for it, overachieve, overextend, overexplain. I kept thinking if I became undeniable, they'd have no choice but to love me out loud. But the truth is, love that has to be earned is never love at all. It's approval in costume, and approval fades as quickly as it's given. It took years of silence to understand that their blindness wasn't my fault. Some people are incapable of seeing the light in you, because it reminds them of the shadows they live in. I kept confusing their discomfort with my unworthiness. When they ignored my wedding, I told myself it was because I wasn't enough, not because they weren't capable of showing up. It took me far too long to realize that their absence didn't mean I was lacking, it meant they were limited. Peace started small. It didn't arrive like a grand revelation. It came in quiet mornings when I didn't wake up checking my phone for messages that would never come. It came in long drives with no destination, where the only sound was my own breathing. It came in learning that I could enjoy something without posting it, without proving it, without waiting for anyone to clap. It came when I learned how to stop auditioning for love. There's a strange power in not being seen by the people you thought mattered most. It forces you to meet yourself in ways you never had to before. When no one claps, you have to decide if you still believe in your own music. I used to fill the silence with noise, work, people, distractions, anything to drown out the echo of being overlooked. But eventually, the quiet becomes your friend. You start to hear your own voice again, the one that got lost under all the wanting. When I bought that Porsche, it wasn't really about the car. It was about the version of me that thought she had to earn visibility. It was proof to myself that I could create something out of being invisible. But after the first few drives, the thrill faded. The engine roared, but my heart didn't. Because peace doesn't sound like acceleration, it sounds like stillness. The irony is that once I stopped needing them to notice me, that's when they did. The calls, the messages, the sudden affection. All timed perfectly after I had something they could understand, success that could be measured, admired, envied. They mistook my growth for glamour. They didn't see the years of quiet labor, of pain turned into purpose. They just saw the surface, and I let them for a while because it was easier than explaining what I had to walk through to get here. But peace demanded more honesty. It asked me to stop accepting counterfeit love. It asked me to stop showing up to places that kept wounding me. It asked me to accept that not every door deserves knocking, not every relationship deserves repair. And that was the hardest lesson, realizing that letting go isn't cruelty, it's clarity. For so long I thought healing would look like reconciliation, like them finally saying, "We're proud of you." But real healing looked like me not needing to hear it anymore. I stopped chasing closure from people who were never open to begin with. I stopped rehearsing the speech I'd give them if they ever asked why I distanced myself. Because the truth doesn't need an audience. Peace is knowing you could explain yourself and choosing silence instead. There's something sacred about sitting in your own company and not feeling lonely. About coming home and not checking who's missing. About driving past places that used to break your heart and feeling nothing but calm. That's luxury. Not the kind you can display, but the kind that lives quietly inside you. Peace doesn't come easy. It comes after the storm, after you've screamed, after you've cried in cars parked under streetlights, wondering why love had to be so conditional. It comes after you stop defending the people who hurt you. It comes after you stop confusing endurance with loyalty. I used to think walking away was weakness. Now I know it's wisdom. I remember sitting in that car one evening, parked outside the same house that once made me feel like a stranger. My parents were inside, laughing with guests, probably talking about the Porsche again. I could have gone in. I could have joined the performance. But instead, I sat there, listening to the hum of the engine, feeling nothing but stillness. That's when I realized, peace doesn't need an audience. It just needs presence. Every mile I drove that night felt like a metaphor. Every streetlight passed felt like a chapter closing. I wasn't running away, I was moving on. There's a difference. Running away is driven by fear. Moving on is powered by peace. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't thinking about who would see me. I wasn't trying to look strong. I just was. People talk about success like it's the destination, but they never tell you how lonely it can be when the people you wanted to share it with never show up. The trick is learning that peace is the real success. Because money can fill rooms, but peace fills souls. It's quieter, but it lasts longer. Now, when my phone rings and I see their names, I don't feel that pang of hope anymore. I answer if I want to. Not because I'm afraid of losing connection. I don't measure their interest against my worth. I let them talk, I listen, and I hang up without the ache. That's peace, when you can engage without expectation. I don't post my wins anymore. I don't need to broadcast my joy to make it real. The world can assume what it wants, I know my truth. My life no longer revolves around proving that I made it. It revolves around protecting the calm I fought for. There's this moment that always stays with me. A morning not long ago, when I drove to the coast before sunrise. I parked the car, walked barefoot onto the sand and watched the ocean wake up. No noise, no audience. Just me, the waves, and that golden hour kind of silence. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I didn't wish anyone else was there to see it. I just breathed. That right there, that's luxury. The truest luxury isn't what you can buy. It's what you can let go of. It's the absence of needing to prove, to chase, to fix. It's sleeping well because your heart isn't busy defending its worth. It's smiling without performance. It's walking into a room and not scanning for approval. People often ask, don't you want to make things right with them? And I smile, because they don't understand. Things are right. I just stopped defining right by reconciliation. Sometimes peace looks like distance. Sometimes love means loving them safely, from afar. There was a time I would have given anything to be seen by them. To hear that sentence every child longs for. We're proud of you. Now, I'm proud of myself for surviving without it. For creating a life that feels whole even without their applause. Peace taught me that validation is a loan that comes with interest. You keep borrowing it until you're in emotional debt. But self-acceptance, that's ownership. No one can repossess it. When I look back at who I was, the girl waiting by the phone, the bride watching empty seats, the woman who thought a car could heal what silence broke, I don't feel shame. I feel compassion. She didn't know peace yet. She thought being seen was the goal. But now I know being understood by yourself is worth more than being admired by others. That's what peace feels like, not loud, not flashy, not constant joy. Just enough quiet to hear your own heart and not mistake it for someone else's echo. Peace doesn't mean your past stops hurting, it means it stops controlling you. So, when I sit in that Porsche now, I don't see luxury, I see lessons. I see the girl who built herself piece by piece. I see the woman who no longer drives toward validation but toward serenity. I see someone who finally understands that the loudest thing she could ever say to the world is nothing at all. Because the truest luxury is peace. The kind that comes when you stop needing to be seen by those who never looked,